first came to Atlanta and Yeshiva High School in 1974, the school was located in a house on the Vista, not far from Beth Jacob. There was a small student body. One of the students who impressed me from the start was a young woman by the name of Sharon Rosenzweig. She stood out from among the rest because of her dedication to Torah learning, Shmiras HaMitzvos, and especially the way she davened. Even as a young girl, she demonstrated a tremendous connection with Hashem. Sharon's life was not easy. She was diagnosed with cancer at a young age. She was a real fighter, and after many painful procedures, including a bone marrow transplant, with the help of Hashem, she was able to overcome this difficulty. She met a wonderful young man, Mark Litchenthal, who was also a cancer survivor, and they married. Unfortunately, the marriage did not last long, as he passed away not long after their marriage. Throughout all these trials and tribulations, Sharon remained strong and upbeat. She demonstrated a sincere emunah b'Hashem, that Hashem knows what he is doing. But Sharon did not only overcome her disease, she gave of herself to help others in need. Through her talents in the field of art, she worked as an art therapist for many years in New York. And although she had established her life in New York, when she realized that her mother needed her help, she moved to Atlanta to be with her dear mother. And we know how much her mother loved her. Sharon also excelled in Hakaras HaTov, expressing her gratitude to Hashem as well as to everyone who helped her. I know that personally, whenever I met her during her visits to Atlanta, and ever since she moved back, she would always fondly remember our earlier days at Yeshiva High School and express her thanks to me. And when she asked me to say Kaddish for her late husband, she again was so grateful that I was willing to do that for her. I feel that the final pasuk in this week's the Haftorah of a few weeks ago, when she passed away, sums up our dear Sharon's life. Higid l'cha adam matov ma Hashem doresh bimcha ki im asos mishpat v'avas chesed v'atznei aleches im elokecha. He has told you, man, what is good and what Hashem seeks of you. Only the performance of justice, the love of kindness, and walking humbly with Hashem. The last words, V'atznei aleches im Hashem, walking humbly with God, can be understood by the Gemara to mean that by remaining pure and honest in joy, and strong and steadfast in sorrow, one proves that she walks humbly with Hashem at all times. Her husband's yahrzeit was on Shavuos. I spoke with Sharon briefly about her husband and how special he was. She expressed to me how it was hard to believe that it had already been 37 years since his passing. Now we say our final farewell to Rachel Rus Bas Avraham Sharon, as her beautiful neshama joins that of her husband Mordechai Shalom, close to Hashem. Bila hamavis lanetzach u'macha Hashem Elokim dima miyal kapanim. May death be swallowed up forever, and may Hashem wipe away tears from every face.
Sharon Rosenzweig and I go back 52 years, when we first met in second grade in the Hebrew Academy of Atlanta on North Druid Hills Road. It was a class of 21 boys and girls, and I don't remember what triggered our becoming friends, but we did so quickly. I suspect it was our mutual tendency towards making mischief and waiting to see which one of us would take the fall. Most often, I was the one who got in trouble, while Sharon would put on an innocent look, but totally enjoying the concept of Rabbi Feldman's daughter getting caught. Truthfully, I didn't mind, not one bit. I loved providing Sharon with entertainment, and it was well worth getting caught. Just to hear her effervescent giggle and see the delight in her eyes as we later replayed the event privately. Apparently, Sharon wasn't the only one who got a kick out of these incidents. Her mother, Mrs. Ellen Rosenzweig, may she live and be well, utterly enjoyed hearing Sharon relate these tales of us two mischief makers, especially because Rabbi Feldman's daughter was involved. Anyone who knew Mrs. Rosenzweig back then knew what a strict, no-nonsense disciplinarian she was with her only child. But Sharon quickly figured out that as long as she mentioned Chava Feldman's name, she never suffered any serious consequences. Within the next 2 or 3 years, Mr. and Mrs. Rosenzweig, both German refugees and Holocaust survivors, had the foresight and wisdom to buy a home in the Beth Jacob neighborhood so that their only daughter could walk to shul on Shabbos and be raised among the other families of the Beth Jacob community. That move served Sharon very well. She was always curious and outgoing, and therefore made many friends and long-lasting relationships with many of the families in the community. It also provided Sharon and I with plenty of chances to get together, both on Shabbos and after school. I recall a certain sleepover that Sharon and I had at her house one Saturday night. True to her nature, Mrs. Rosenzweig laid down strict instructions about when we were to go to sleep, what we were allowed to eat, and most importantly, where in the house we were not to eat. Sharon was quite savvy by that age and knew how to get away with things, so we stocked up on chocolate, gum, cookies, and all sorts of nosh, stowed it under the mattress in her bedroom, and planned to have the time of our lives. That way, we could have snacks at regular intervals till the wee hours of the morning. Well, that plan lasted for about 15 minutes, when we were giggling a bit too loudly and woke up Sharon's parents. Suddenly, the bedroom door swung open, and before Mrs. Rosenzweig even started to reprimand us, she began sniffing the air, walked into the bedroom, sniffed a little more, and said, "Okay, out with it. Where are you hiding the nosh?" Even 20 or 30 years later, whenever I would be back in Atlanta visiting, Mrs. Rosenzweig would remind me of that incident. Apparently, she wasn't that upset after all. A highlight of my friendship with Sharon was definitely the Purim that we decided to dress up together as a married couple from Mea She'arim. Neither one of us had ever been to Mea She'arim, nor actually had any occasion to see what a couple might look like from Mea She'arim. But we used our imaginations, which were very active back in our school days. We decided that our costume will remain a secret. We were going to surprise our parents on Purim Day and delight them with our creativity. And oh, what nachas they were going to derive from us. Purim Day arrived, and we decided to make our grand entrance into the annual Beth Jacob Purim Suda. In we walked, arm in arm, and giggling, of course, because if you were with Sharon, you were for sure giggling. Sharon in a baggy black suit, oversized black hat, a mustache and beard painted on her face, and I with a black kerchief tightly wound around my head, a frumpy-looking wool dress, black tights, and a pillow stuffed under the dress on my stomach. Well, our mother's expressions were priceless. 2 big round shocked circles for mouths, followed by Mrs. Rosenzweig breaking out into the most hysterical laugh Sharon had ever heard. Needless to say, we never lived that one down, and Sharon and I were delighted to provide her mother with yet another Sharon Chava story to relive every time we saw each other in the next decades to come. The years passed. We entered Yeshiva High School of Atlanta and welcomed new girls into our circle. As our friendship continued, so did our troublemaking. Passing notes during class was most often the most serious transgression. But the sparkle in Sharon's eyes and the gift of that delicious giggle still spurred us on in making those long school days a little bit more fun. I must add at this point, and I'm totally serious, that I am and will be forever indebted to Sharon for teaching me the language of gibberish. I don't know from where she learned it, but she was an excellent gibberish instructor, and I mastered the rules very quickly. That gibberish was our go-to language whenever we wanted to speak without others understanding what we were saying. I think most of our phone conversations in high school were in gibberish so that our mothers had no idea what we were discussing for hours on end. Years and years later, I actually tried to teach my own daughters the rules of gibberish language, but they quickly realized it just wasn't worth the trouble if their own mother was the master of the language. Life got a little bit more serious, or let's say a lot more serious, the summer that we were turning 17 years old. That summer, Sharon received a leukemia diagnosis that would change the course of her life as she knew it. While others were starting to plan where they might be attending seminary after high school, Sharon and her parents were planning how to keep her alive. The next few years were a blur of hospital stays in New York Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital, chemotherapy, radiation, pills, treatments, and finally remission, albeit temporary. But from that first day and all through the years, to her very last, I never heard her ask, "Why me? What does Hashem want from me?" Nor complain of the pain and discomfort she suffered. When she had every right to complain at such a young age, question why Hashem chose to give her this sorrow. Never would anybody ever see Mrs. Rosenzweig without a warm smile and greeting, always perfectly mannered, and not the slightest outward hint that her only child, whom she waited for years and years to receive, may not even live another year. It was during one of Sharon's hospital stays that she was introduced to another cancer patient, her future husband, Mark Mordechai Litchenthal. The sight of Sharon as a Kala, radiant in her white taffeta gown and beautiful, joyous smile, is an image that has not faded over these last 37 years. Hashem gave Sharon and Mark 1 year together. Mark was Nifter the night before my own wedding. A widow at the age of 22, Sharon continued in her art studies, got her graduate degree, joined Chesed organizations, and built a life for herself in Brooklyn. But what was astonishing to all is that while we, her childhood friends, continued to pass through normal milestones such as getting married, giving birth, raising a family, and with Hashem's help even being blessed with grandchildren, Sharon knew as a fact that these were gifts she would never receive. Not only did she accept her lot, not only did she continue to function and lead a productive life, nor complain to Hashem when she relapsed, but she actually experienced and felt true simcha whenever any of us shared the latest news with her. She would jump and hoot for joy when someone gave birth or made a bar mitzvah or another simcha. And she wanted pictures. She demanded, send pictures and a full description of whatever event took place. Never did she begrudge anybody for having what she could have, but never would. She really and truly loved every fellow Jew and felt a keen sense of responsibility to anyone in need, whether it was collecting money for an organization or an individual or a needy friend, sharing her medical knowledge and experiences with anyone who might need information or was also going through treatments. While still a teenager, on Yom Tov days when Yizkor is recited, Sharon was the only girl our age who stayed standing next to her mother and recited Yizkor along with her, while the rest of us joined the procession out to the lobby to wait for Yizkor to be over. One time, someone questioned her as to why she stayed in and said Yizkor if her own parents were, thank God, still alive. Somebody has to say Yizkor for all those killed during the Holocaust, was her response. After her story was shared in Art Scroll's Times of Challenge, she was invited to speak at different schools and in different venues. And she gladly shared her experiences during the cancer treatments, but always stressed her strong belief in absolute emunah that all is from above. She found joy in many areas of her life and was able to delight in simple things like macadamia nuts and a can of ice cold Coke, which she had every day of her life, believe it or not. Sharon lived by a certain motto, which became her mantra through every hardship, relapse, painful condition, and most recently, when she gave up the life she had built for herself in Brooklyn over the course of 30 years to move back home to Atlanta to care for and watch over her mother. What was that? Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. Sharon thanked Hashem every day for what she had. And she also thanked Hashem for every day that he gave her. And to Sharon, Rachel Ruth, I know that you are finally in a place where you know only pure joy, peace, and total nechama. That all the sorrows you endured in your life have transformed into joy and happiness that will forever be your companion as you bask in Hashem's warm presence and watch over us with your ayin tova. We're the guest to the gin to the geese, the guy with the gilma, the guest you the goo. That's for you, Sharon.
Tonight, I'm just going to talk about Sharon. I met Sharon when I was about 12 years old. Probably nobody here would really know that Sharon's father and my father were old friends. They both had their small businesses in Atlanta, in downtown Atlanta, for many years. Sharon's father had an orthopedic shoe store, and a few doors down, my father had Mike's barber shop. That's where my history with Sharon kind of begins. Our parents were very overprotective, and that became our common bond. We spent many Shabbos afternoons together in Atlanta. We were homework buddies, we laughed together, we cried together. We were there for each other. Before I sat down to organize my words and my thoughts about Sharon, I checked through my phone messages and my texts and even teenage letters that Sharon and I had exchanged over the years. I validated what I thought. Sharon and I were bonded by a friendship that was everlasting. We never really lived in the same city after high school, but it didn't matter. We were always just a text or a phone call away from each other. When I heard she had a very debilitating stroke, my first reaction was, of course I was sad. Okay, she's been through so much. She can conquer this too. It's going to be okay. So I began to send her numerous ridiculous, upbeat, almost manic phone messages on WhatsApp, wishing her a recovery, telling her I was thinking of her, telling her it's going to be okay, wishing her a good Shabbos, and then a good Vach. And I was waiting for a response so patiently, and there was no doubt in my mind that Sharon was going to be okay. but my messages weren't answered, and I was really shocked when she died. I'm still beyond shocked. Sharon must have had a mission. She was there for anyone who wanted to be her friend. She was there, rich or poor, cute or homely, annoying or sweet, young or old. Sharon was a friend to those who welcomed her friendship. When my mother was sick, and then she was dying, there was absolutely nothing that Sharon wouldn't do to help me cope. She sent me amazing, detailed medical advice, financial guidance, but really she was just my friend, and she knew I needed a friend. She was a friend to my family, to my parents, to my sister, to my husband, to my precious children. If you knew Sharon, you had to know that she loved art and music and people and the color purple and Purim and Jewish holidays and God. You also knew that she survived leukemia, a bone marrow transplant. She was married to her absolutely wonderful husband, Mark, who was the love of her life. And then Mark died on Shavuos. She was then a widow for over 35 years. She battled other cancers, and she went on to do art therapy. And she's taking care of other sick people all the time. She took care of Mark's parents. We've been willingly taking care of Mark's parents. She did it with all of her heart, and her own parents. At this time in her life, she wasn't really working, and she moved back to Atlanta to make sure that her mother would be well taken care of. In spite of everything, Sharon was an extremely happy person. What exactly was she so happy about? I believe the truth is that she was very connected to God, and she lived to celebrate life. I believe she had a special connection to God, and she valued waking up each morning to a new day. Sharon was my best fan. She always made me feel good. My own children were connected to her. She made them feel very accepted. She always built people up. She had a quality of complimenting others that was very uplifting. That's an incredible gift for a person to have. Sharon was a gift to me. Sharon was a gift to all who were touched by her. I recently found a letter that was written to her over 20 years ago by one of my daughters, who was 13 at the time. I just want to share a few lines of my daughter's letter to Sharon. Please keep in mind that my daughter was 13 when this was written. This is, Dear Sharon, I really enjoyed your stay. As I mentioned in the mall, most of Emma's friends don't even say hi to us. It was really special the way you played Scrabble with us and you spent time with us kids. You convinced Emma that it's not so bad for a 13-year-old to wear makeup. We could have such a fun time with you if you could please come back for Purim. Sharon, please come back to our house again soon. Love, Rifki. How many 13-year-olds did our friend Sharon make feel special? If you're wondering why I would have my daughter's letter from 20 years ago that she wrote to Sharon, it's because when Sharon was cleaning up her apartment and her things and her memories, she came across it and she saved it. She kept it in her purse. And then when she saw me, maybe a year later, she gave it to me because she knew it was precious. Sharon cared. Sharon was very human. I believe she was the way God intended people to be. Through Sharon, there's a confirmation to me that little things matter. Around 1990, she was brought in to speak at our shul in Toronto to a very large group of women. She spoke about her challenges with her health and how she overcame them. She had such a presence, and she was very well received, and her famous line was to live each day at a time and to take one day at a time. The audience was mesmerized by her. It might seem that Hashem took his gift back, that he took Sharon back, but it's not really true, because her existence in this world made a difference and continues to do so. Even though she's not physically with us anymore, we're inspired by her because she was a beautiful and a very real gift. I think I could go on and on forever, really, talking about Sharon. I'm totally broken by this, but I think I'm going to stop and just be inspired by her and try to live up to what she was.
It is very difficult for me to put my thoughts together and pay tribute to you, my dear childhood friend Sharon. In my eyes, you were always a hero and a source of strength to those around you. I met you when I was 10 years old and new in Atlanta. You were kind, funny, sincere, and a joy to be around. I can still remember being in Brooklyn visiting my Bubby and speaking to you on the phone in her house when you shared with me the devastating news that you had leukemia. But from the very beginning and throughout your life, you always remained optimistic and upbeat. I was zochet to be able to spend many Shabbosim with you in Borough Park at 1365A 56th Street. I was so happy that you found your Basher Mark. I can still remember dancing at your chasana. I was also zochet to spend a Shabbos with you and Mark before he was nifter. Throughout the years, you came to my chasana as well as my daughters. Your presence meant so much to me. I also remember when you came to speak to my Jewish studies class in Philadelphia about how you retain emunah and bitachon in Hashem in the face of adversity. Your motto was Baruch Hashem Yom Yom and focus on life. You have always been a source of light and hope no matter what challenges you were faced with. On a lighter note, I always think of you when purchasing anything purple or seeing Coca-Cola bottles. I remember that you had to change to Sprite after your transplant, and you took that in stride as well. In closing, I love you, Sharon, and I appreciate the friendship we shared over the past 48 years.
Hi, I'm Jerry Ezrell. I have to focus speaking on the earlier years of Sharon's life, as that's when she was a more integral part of mine, when both of us were living in Atlanta. I met Sharon when we were about 10 years old at Shereth Israel, where both of our families attended synagogue. As 10-year-old girls do, we were checking each other out when we first met. In 1970, the dress style was very short. Yet Sharon was wearing what would be considered very long at the time and very out of fashion. I was very curious as to why this was. She told me her mother wouldn't let her wear her dresses any shorter, but I really got the impression that she didn't want to. I didn't connect length of dress to religious observance, but rather to some sort of strict upbringing. But in reality, it was my first encounter with tznius. She was the only one I had ever met who dressed like that. I considered it an oddity until 2 years later while attending NCSY, when I learned that tznius was one of the very basic halachas for women. Sharon was ahead of her time for Atlanta, Georgia. She and I reconnected 3 years after we first met, when we both entered the 8th grade at the yeshiva high school. They can change their name to anything they want, but that's what they will always be to us, the early student body. Sharon's family had moved into the Beth Jacob community where I lived. We were a school of 8 girls with a total student body of 25. That made for interesting connections and relationships that will always be. But Sharon was always teaching, even if I wasn't always learning. One particular classmate, who shall remain nameless, and I felt that school was there for our entertainment. And boy, did we entertain ourselves, wreaking havoc. And Sharon would admonish us time after time, telling us to behave. I think she felt we were being disrespectful to the teachers, which we were. She just seemed to have an innate sense of derech eretz. She just got it. Always trying to teach. Me, not learning so much. Even in her most outrageous moments, she would only say, "Oh, H-E double toothpicks." She was just good. And she was the artist in the class. She spent a lot of time drawing. She was really pretty good at it too. Art from a young age became very important to her, with an understanding several years later how it could be helpful to others. Art therapy was her way of giving to others who were in need of a way to express themselves, to help relieve their suffering. She took what she went through during her illness and found a way to make some good come of it. And even more good did come out of it. She met Mark. Two people dealing with severe health issues found their way to each other. I remember feeling so grateful that she had found happiness in her very difficult life. Sadly, it was short-lived, with Mark passing way too soon. But Sharon, being Sharon, did not let that destroy her. Mark was an only child, and Sharon stayed as a daughter would to his parents for their entire lives. Who else would dedicate so many years of her life, decades actually, to caring for in-laws after such a short time being married? Sharon, of course. And later on, devoting her life to her mother. As I sit here writing this, my granddaughter sitting next to me, I think of her bright smile waiting to greet me whenever I came to town. A truly bright and happy smile from someone who didn't have her husband, never got to have children, never got to have a granddaughter sitting next to her. We from the Yeshiva High School have lost too many too soon. Jonathan, Amram, Martin, and Sharon. Last names have never been necessary. We can just say Sharon and everyone knows. Not just who she was, but her very essence. We Atlanta folk, especially those of us from Yeshiva High School, are a family, and always will be. And even in her passing, I'm still learning from her. Thank you, Sharon. You are so very sorely missed.